Hello guys, Dello304 here. Today we are going to be doing a review on the Samsung Galaxy S7. I'm a little bit late to the party with this one. I've been pretty busy lately, haven't really had much time to make videos, but that said, it is Sunday and I finally have some free time, so I wanted to go ahead and record this review. So, my last comparison video I did between this phone and the iPhone 6s, I kind of adopted a more kind of B-rolly type video, but for the review I think I'm going to go back to my usual record the whole thing in one take and hopefully it goes okay strategy. So that's what we're going to be doing for the review of this phone. But here she is. This is the Samsung Galaxy S7. This is probably no. This is Samsung's best smartphone ever. This is the best phone they have ever made, for several reasons, which we are going to get into. But I think the Galaxy is finally to the point where I can say it's just about as good as an iPhone in terms of performance and reliability, build quality, and all the other related points. So we're going to go ahead and get into that right now. But as you can see, the design itself is pretty similar to the S6. However, they have adopted the curved back. So the back has more curves, unlike the Galaxy S6, which this does make for a very nice feel in the hand. This phone is probably one of the most ergonomic and comfortable phones I have ever held in my life. And also, you may notice that they have curved the edges of the glass just a little bit, kind of like the iPhone, although not as extreme. So, I mean, that does, again, enhance the feel of the phone in the hand. Of course, it's still made of glass and metal, just like the Galaxy S6, but this is a notable improvement from the Galaxy S6 in terms of build quality. I really have no complaints with the build quality on this phone. The only thing I have noticed about the build quality is that the My Home button seems to be a little bit loose. It seems to move around a little bit, but it's really not that big a deal. The cutout is nice. I mean, everything on this phone is made very well, so that's cool. And another thing that is generally nice about the hardware is they've actually brought back the things from the Galaxy S5, which made the Galaxy S5 a decent phone. They've brought back IP68 water resistance. I believe the Galaxy S5 was only IP67, so this is better, but apparently you can dunk this in water for 5 feet for 30 minutes and it will be okay. And I've actually tested that unwillingly. I was out to dinner, I was using this phone, it was on the table. I had a big glass of pink lemonade and I brushed it and I knocked it right over and it fell all over this phone. It like drenched this phone in lemonade. So yeah, I'm kind of happy that I had that phone this night, or that I had this phone that night, and of course, the phone came out fine. I just washed it off with water, and it is perfectly fine. Another thing that they also added back is an SD card slot. So this is the SIM SD combo tray here, so if you pull this out, there is an SD slot now, which is nice because the Galaxy S6 did not have an SD slot, and people were pretty mad about that. But of course, they've brought those two features back, so I'm pretty happy about that. So the first thing I want to do before I actually get into the phone is I want to just take a little, hardware tour. Of course, we have your display here. We have our home button. The fingerprint scanner is a little bit better than the S6 one. It's still not quite as good as the iPhone version, as the Touch ID fingerprint scanner, but it is to the point where I would actually want to use it every day. So of course we have your cameras up here, your front camera, home button. We still have the wonky capacitive buttons that are reversed on Samsung phones. I actually prefer that though. On the bottom, of course, you have your headphone jack, USB 2.0 port. Surprisingly, this phone does not have USB-C. I assume that is for support with Samsung's older accessories for the phone. You have a microphone and a speaker. Of course, the lock button is pretty nicely placed on the side. It's in a perfect place for your thumb to go, so you just hit that, wake the phone up just fine. Got the volume buttons over here, another microphone here, and the SIM slot, or the SIM SD card combo slot. So here is the camera on the back. So we have a 12 megapixel camera this year. I will get into that in more depth, but as you may see, the camera does not stick out nearly as far as the Galaxy S6, so that is quite nice. Of course, we have our flash and our heart rate sensor there. Galaxy S7, AT&T tramp stamp, because that's where I bought this phone from. So that's just a little hardware tour of the phone itself. This phone is actually thicker than the Galaxy S6, which is pretty interesting. We now have a 3,000 milliamp hour battery too, so that's cool. Anyway, enough about the hardware, or enough about the general hardware of the phone. Let's go ahead and talk about some things. The first thing I want to touch on is the display, which is a 5.1-inch 1440p Super AMOLED display housed under Gorilla Glass 4. And of course, I've always said this about Samsung phones in the past, but Samsung displays have always been pretty much the best display on the market in terms of just visual clarity and, you know, just generally how nice it looks. So yeah, we have a pretty nice display on this. For the SoC, we actually have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 820 this year, which is a much better SoC than the Snapdragon 810. So they're using Qualcomm's new Cryo cores, which is nice, in a big dot little configuration. So that would be 4 cores. So you have two 2.2 gigahertz high power cores and two 1.6 gigahertz lower power cores. This phone actually matches the Apple A9 in terms of performance, which is pretty astounding because last year the A9 completely blew everything out of the water. So yeah, pretty amazing there. We have 4 gigabytes of LPDDR4 RAM, which is pretty insane for a phone. Of course, that runs at 1866 megahertz, and the Adreno 530 GPU. Give me 1 second while I mute my messages here. But pretty decent specs, pretty good specs for a phone. Of course, specs, you know, the numbers aren't everything, obviously. I mean, the iPhone 6s is one of the best performing phones ever, but yeah, that's pretty nice. Of course, we're still running TouchWiz atop Android 6.0, so, you know, I mean, that's still there, but actually TouchWiz has gotten very, very much better. This is Samsung's newest version, obviously. We're running under Android 6.0.1. And the performance, general performance on this phone, I have zero complaints. This phone is a very nice performer. This is the best version of TouchWiz, and as people have been saying in the past, this is pretty much the best version of TouchWiz ever. It's to the point where it's like, you know, TouchWiz isn't really a bad thing anymore. So, of course, I really am very happy with the performance on this phone. Obviously, this may look a little different than the stock experience. I have the Android 6.0 theme from the Samsung theme store installed on the phone, so it makes it look a little bit more stock than it normally would. And I also have the DPI set to the condensed setting, which I actually have a video on how to do that. If you're interested, just go check my channel. But that's why my phone looks a little bit different than yours might if you pull it out of the box. So now I want to talk about the cameras. So of course we have a 5 megapixel front-facing camera on the front, which is wide angle, which is pretty nice. I would say this is definitely better than the iPhone front camera, even though the 6S does have a 5 megapixel. It's not wide angle, so that kind of stinks. But anyway, we have the 12 megapixel camera on the back, and so for this camera, you're actually going to get either a Samsung ISOCELL sensor or the Sony IMX260. So it's kind of a toss-up. It's random. This phone actually has the Sony sensor. So yeah, the photos from this phone are absolutely excellent, and of course I will give a couple of photos here. So I took a couple of pics with the phone, so you can see the general quality. Obviously the clarity is really nice. Even though it's only 12 megapixels instead of 16, they've made up for it with bigger pixels, and just in general the camera is really, really nice. So of course I will have some pictures going through right now. But the real thing about this camera that I really want to get into is that the autofocus on this phone's camera is literally the fastest autofocus I have ever used in my entire life. It's really, really quick. And so I'm going to double tap the home button to launch the camera. So that was very quick. But okay, we have an SD card. But so I'm going to put my hand in front of the camera. Whoop, there you go. Look at that. Look how fast that focus is. I'm not sure if they're using laser autofocus, but this is absolutely insane. So one of the biggest things I hated about the Galaxy S5 is that the camera was crap, in that it wouldn't focus a lot of the time and it was slow to launch, but this camera is probably the fastest and best camera experience I've ever had on a phone, period. So that's nice. And of course, the camera app is a little bit changed, and you have a bunch of options in here. You can even shoot in RAW if you wanted to. Of course, you have to change the mode to the professional mode, which is there, but the camera has a lot of nice features. You can do a lot of things with the camera app, and it's finally not a bloated piece of garbage, so I'm very happy about that. So let's talk about the next big topic, battery life. So as you can see, I am currently at 24%, but I took a screenshot here. This was I was at 22%. I got 3 hours and 57 minutes of screen on time. So this is not the best benchmark because I personally don't use my phone all day long. I imagine one could achieve 4 to 5 hours of screen on time if this was with moderate use, but my phone sits standby a lot of the time, so I don't always get the best screen on time that is possible with the phone. But the phone now has a 3000 milliamp hour battery. Not sure if I mentioned that already, which is a pretty substantial increase from the Galaxy S6's 2550 milliamp hour battery. So I would say the battery is average to pretty good depending on who you are, and I would say it would definitely last all day. Of course, this phone does support Quick Charge 2.0, not 3.0, which is kind of weird, but yeah, you can quick charge the phone. And I would say the standby time on this phone in stock form needs a little work, but the standby time in Android 6.0 is still not quite as good as the iPhone. But what I did to help with that is I installed Greenify, and I enabled this aggressive doze thing, which basically makes doze kick in a lot more than it normally would. So that definitely helps with the standby time on this phone, and I have no complaints with the battery life. So I mean, I'm going to talk now. I guess we can talk about just the miscellaneous things that I haven't covered yet. So one thing that I do miss and like about the Samsung phones that I don't really see this feature on many other phones, I like the notification LED. That is just a nice feature. So I'm glad that they still have the little LED here for notifications. So that's one thing I do like about the phone. And I also I also do like how the screen doesn't light up for most notifications. So obviously the iPhone gained this feature where if the iPhone is in your pocket and the proximity sensor detects that, it won't illuminate the screen. But I kind of like how it doesn't do that at all. But that's kind of just a personal preference thing. And of course, my dislikes, the things that I don't really like about the phone, is that the fingerprint scanner is not quite as good as the iPhone. I guess I can demonstrate that now. I just need to set my secure lock to instantly. But the fingerprint scanner still isn't quite as good as the iPhone, but I mean, it's pretty quick, as you saw. I mean, it is pretty fast, and it's pretty accurate most of the time. So I don't really have an issue with it, but I would say the iPhone still has the edge on the fingerprint sensor, but definitely it's to the point where I would use it. And of course, the inevitable, this phone is a freaking fingerprint magnet, as you can see. I tend to use a little clear case with this phone, but yeah, that's just a byproduct of being made of glass and metal. It's just, well, glass more likely, but yeah, this phone's a fingerprint magnet, so not a huge fan of that. But there you go. That is my final review of the Samsung Galaxy S7. This is the best Android phone of 2016 so far, I would say. If you're thinking about getting this over the LG G5 or some of the other phones that come out, maybe even the HTC 10, I would say this phone is probably still the best option. I don't really like the G5 at all, so if you're wondering to get this or the G5, I would say definitely buy the Galaxy S7. So there you are. I don't really want to drag this out any further than I already have, so that is my review on the Galaxy S7. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys later.